As the days pass and Karen's disgrace continues to spread throughout the neighborhood, she begins to spiral. She starts plotting her revenge. Karen can't stand the idea of being seen as weak or powerless. The HOA board, despite removing her from her role, still feels a level of obligation to her. She used to be a major figure, and they're hesitant to completely cut ties. Feeling betrayed by the HOA board and the entire neighborhood, Karen starts looking for new ways to get back at the people she feels have wronged her. She starts tailing residents, showing up at community events uninvited, and making snide comments about proper parking etiquette at every opportunity. Twist. The fake HOA meeting. Karen's first big plan comes when she sends out fake invitations to a special HOA meeting claiming to have an important announcement. She doesn't inform the actual HOA board members about this meeting, but she convinces a few residents that it's for urgent matters, specifically her reinstatement as HOA president. You catch wind of her plan when one of your neighbors, a longtime friend, calls you. Karen's up to something. She's trying to throw an impromptu HOA meeting in the old community center. It's supposed to be about the car incident, but I think she's trying to get her power back. You, of course, are wary of her tricks. Deciding not to let her get away with it, you and a couple of friends show up at the meeting, where you find the room filled with only a handful of Karen's closest supporters, people who have always been intimidated by her and who are now simply looking to avoid trouble. Karen stands at the front of the room, speaking confidently to the few remaining residents, trying to rally them around her idea to take back control of the neighborhood. But as she starts to speak, a few of the residents look at each other with uncomfortable glances. They start questioning her, subtly calling out the lies she's been telling about the HOA board and her wrongful actions regarding the FBI car. It's here that you stand up, pointing out that the meeting isn't legitimate. There's no official HOA notice, no actual HOA members involved, and no agenda. The group slowly begins to fall apart as people begin to realize they've been manipulated. Karen, noticing her grip on power slipping again, attempts to save face by announcing her resignation from the HOA, claiming she's done with this foolishness and taking a break from all the stress. But it's clear to everyone that she's not in control anymore. The people are starting to see through her, and even her most loyal supporters are growing tired of the drama. With Karen now on the fringe, the FBI's involvement doesn't end. Because the agents were involved in such a high-profile case, the investigation continues. One evening, while you're sitting in your living room trying to relax, your doorbell rings. To your surprise, it's one of the FBI agents who was involved in the tow truck situation. "Hey, I know things were a bit chaotic the other day," Agent Harris says with a smile. "We just wanted to check in, see how you were doing." You invite him in and the two of you start talking. Turns out the car incident wasn't the only reason they were in town. There's a larger federal investigation at play, and the agents are going through various undercover operations in the area to bust a huge crime syndicate that's been operating just under the radar. Your car wasn't just any ordinary surveillance vehicle. It was part of a carefully planned sting operation targeting people involved in money laundering. As the story unfolds, you realize just how much you've been unwittingly caught up in. The case is bigger than you initially thought, and your involvement could end up being pivotal in taking down some major criminals. Agent Harris even jokes that if it wasn't for Karen's interference, they would have been able to wrap things up a lot sooner. But now, Karen has unwittingly thrown a wrench into their plans. While the investigation is still ongoing, Karen's interruption means a bit of a delay as they have to reroute their surveillance efforts. You know, it's not every day we run into someone who gets their car towed by an HOA enforcer and ends up in the middle of a federal case, Harris adds with a grin. Frustrated by her dwindling power and the fact that the FBI case is still ongoing, Karen decides to escalate her behavior. She's convinced that the FBI's investigation is somehow linked to her neighborhood's decline, and she starts sending out complaints to the local police, the city council, and anyone else she can think of, claiming that the neighborhood is being monitored by the FBI. She starts making a public spectacle of herself, organizing neighborhood protests and petitioning to end the FBI's presence in the area. Of course, the residents are completely baffled. No one is even sure how Karen managed to get involved in Chai. Now that the FBI agents are involved, Karen starts to unravel. She tries to rally the neighbors who are watching, calling them over to witness her side of the story. But the neighbors, having heard about Karen's behavior in the past, are already siding with you. They're laughing behind her back, whispering among themselves about how she's gone too far this time. Meanwhile, the FBI agents take the situation more seriously than Karen could have imagined. They take her aside and calmly explain that interfering with federal property and an ongoing investigation could result in severe consequences. They even mention that her actions could affect future cases she doesn't even know about. Karen, furious, attempts to call her lawyer, but the FBI isn't interested in her legal threats. They inform her that she's about to get a very public lesson in why you don't mess with federal agents. They ask for her identification and start to document the entire interaction. Act 5. The Fallout. The next few days are filled with even more drama. The story of Karen's failed attempt to tow an FBI agent's car spreads like wildfire throughout the neighborhood. Everyone is talking about it, and the HOA's reputation begins to crumble. Many neighbors now see Karen for what she is, a power-hungry tyrant who will stop at nothing to assert control, even if it means making a huge mistake. The HOA board, while trying to keep things under wraps, has no choice but to address the situation at the next meeting. The neighbors who've been silently supporting Karen behind closed doors now openly question her methods. One by one, people speak out about how oppressive Karen has been, recounting stories of her nitpicking over every little rule. Karen, embarrassed and red-faced, tries to defend herself, but no one is listening anymore. Even the board members who once feared her seem uninterested in protecting her. It becomes clear that Karen's days as the HOA enforcer are over. Act 6. The Resolution. Karen's power wanes and the neighborhood slowly begins to recover from the chaos she stirred. Your car is safe, and the FBI investigation continues without a hitch. You've gained a new appreciation for the FBI agents who handled the situation with professionalism and calm, even in the face of such absurdity. As for Karen, well, she's been stripped of her authority within the HOA. She tries to make a comeback, but the damage is done. Neighbors no longer take her seriously, and she's forced to back off and reconsider her methods. Epilogue. A new beginning. Things return to normal in the neighborhood, but the story of Karen and the FBI will be told for years to come. Every time someone parks in the wrong spot, the whispers begin. Better hope it's not an FBI car. And as for you, well, you've learned the hard way that even the quietest people can have the most unexpected things happen to them. You live in a small, picturesque suburban neighborhood where everyone knows everyone else's business. It's the kind of place where everything is perfect on the surface. The streets are clean, lawns are well kept, and everyone follows the rules. Well, most people do. At the heart of this picture-perfect neighborhood is Karen, a woman in her 50s who has decided that it's her personal mission to uphold the HOA rules at all costs. She lives for power, and the HOA gives her the authority she craves. She's constantly walking around with a clipboard, taking notes on who's breaking the rules, no matter how minor, and writing complaint after complaint. Everyone's secretly terrified of her. You've always kept to yourself, but recently, Karen has been more aggressive with her enforcement of the rules. She sends out emails, knocks on doors, and even issues formal warnings for tiny infractions, like grass being half an inch too long or a car parked a few inches off the curb. One evening, you come home from work to find a note on your windshield. It says your car is parked in violation of HOA rules and must be moved immediately, or it will be towed. You're shocked. The note is overly aggressive, and you're sure you parked perfectly within the lines. You don't think much of it, but later that week, you notice Karen taking down more notes and giving you side-eye whenever you pass by. Act 2. The First Tow Threat. After receiving a second warning and realizing it's not just a coincidence, you reach out to the HOA board to clarify the situation. They tell you they've had several complaints, but they don't seem concerned with giving you a fair chance to explain. You feel like you're being singled out, and you suspect Karen's behind it all. Sure enough, a few days later, Karen approaches you directly, looking smug and determined. She starts lecturing you about how unsightly your car is and how it's bringing down the whole neighborhood. She mentions that she's already arranged for a tow truck to come pick it up. She even says that nobody is above the HOA, as though she's some sort of neighborhood royalty. What Karen doesn't know is that your car isn't just any car. It's a special vehicle assigned to you by the FBI as part of an undercover operation. You've been working on an important case, and the car is a critical part of your surveillance work. It's not flashy, but it's marked with subtle identifiers only the FBI would recognize. You've been briefed not to reveal your identity or involvement in the operation to anyone. Now, you're stuck. Karen's threats seem real, and she's clearly willing to go to extreme lengths to get her way. If she follows through and gets your car towed, it could mess up everything you've been working on. Act 3. The tow truck arrives. One morning, you wake up to the sound of a tow truck rumbling down your street. You rush outside to see Karen standing smugly next to the driver, giving him the go-ahead to tow your car. She's smiling as though she's already won. Your heart sinks as the tow truck driver starts hooking your car up, unaware of its true significance. You know you need to stop this before it spirals out of control, but just as you're about to run out to confront them, you notice something strange. A black SUV pulling up in the distance. The doors of the SUV open and several sharply dressed men in dark suits step out, their FBI agents clearly looking like they mean business. You stand frozen for a moment, unsure of what's happening. The lead agent walks up to the tow truck driver, showing him his badge and immediately demanding that he unhook your car. The agent then turns to Karen, flashing his badge in her face. "Mom," he says coolly, "I think you've made a huge mistake. That car is part of a federal investigation." Karen's face falls. She stammers, trying to explain that she was just doing her job. But the FBI agents aren't interested in her excuses. They calmly tell her that if she doesn't immediately stop what she's doing, they'll have no choice but to pursue legal action for obstructing a federal investigation. Karen, now realizing she's in way over her head, becomes defensive. "I was just following the HOA rules," she argues. "This is ridiculous." But her words are falling on deaf ears. The agents don't raise their voices, they simply state the facts. The HOA sends out notices about parking violations in the community. Karen is the self-appointed enforcer of these rules. Your car, a little too old for her tastes, is parked in front of your home one day when she decides it's the perfect time to make a big move. She calls a tow truck to have your car removed. She doesn't care about the details. She's determined to teach you a lesson about disregarding HOA authority. The twist. Or what Karen doesn't know is that the car she's trying to tow belongs to none other than an undercover FBI agent. You're not just an average person, you're working on a covert assignment that requires discretion. The agent, who's been observing a high-profile case, is out on a brief break when Karen picks the wrong car to mess with. As Karen's tow truck driver pulls up to your car, they start to hook it up. You're home and watch from the window, but before you can run outside and stop them, something unexpected happens. The drama unfolds. Out of nowhere, a black SUV pulls up, and several men in suits approach the scene. It's a group of FBI agents, all with serious expressions. They introduce themselves and inform the tow truck driver that this is a federal investigation vehicle. They tell Karen and the tow truck driver to stop immediately. Karen, already flustered and defensive, tries to argue, but she quickly realizes she's way out of her depth. Escalation. Now, the situation escalates further. The FBI agents begin questioning Karen. They explain that the car she tried to tow is crucial to their investigation, and she may have just compromised a federal case by interfering. Karen doesn't back down. She insists that she was just doing her job and doesn't understand why everyone is making such a big deal out of this. The tow truck driver, caught between a rock and a hard place, starts to panic. He didn't know anything about the FBI investigation and just wanted to get paid. But now he's caught in the middle of an incredibly tense situation. The confrontation. The FBI agents pull out some official documents and explain that if Karen doesn't back off, she could be in serious legal trouble for obstructing a federal investigation. They hand her a piece of paper detailing the potential charges. It's clear that Karen has made a massive mistake by trying to tow the wrong car. Meanwhile, you've stepped outside by this point and are watching the chaos unfold. One of the FBI agents notices you and quietly reassures you that everything is fine and that you won't have to deal with any repercussions. However, Karen is now livid. How dare she be questioned like this? She insists on making a scene, trying to get the attention of other neighbors. She accuses you of being above the law because you have the FBI backing you. The FBI agents keep their cool, explaining the situation in an incredibly professional way. Karen, on the other hand, can't let go of her pride and insists that she was in the right. The fallout. This story gets even juicier as it plays out over the course of weeks. Karen's reputation within the HOA community starts to unravel. Neighbors are talking about her overzealous attitude and how she tried to tow an FBI agent's car. At the same time, the local news picks up the story, and soon everyone in the neighborhood knows what happened. While the HOA board remains silent, some members start reaching out to apologize, knowing how much of a headache Karen has been for everyone. The FBI, satisfied with how the situation is handled, decides not to press further charges, but the agents do make a few calls to ensure that Karen's behavior is documented. The resolution. In the end, Karen is forced to attend an HOA meeting where she has to apologize publicly. Of course, she refuses to admit she was wrong and continues to argue that she was just trying to do her job. She doesn't get a warm welcome from the community, and her standing in the HOA is never the same. Meanwhile, you and your undercover FBI agent friend continue your work, and the story remains a hilarious and unforgettable chapter in your life. This kind of story could easily span 2 hours of YouTube content by focusing on the tension, building the characters, adding humor, twists, and maybe a few Karen moments for extra drama. You could also include a lot of interactions with the other neighbors and the crazy fallout from Karen's mistake.